Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new but same platform of Global Champions. It is a 2022 season, and that means that we are going to be having new conversations, new discussions, new and existing platforms, new and existing guests in order to get ready for Doha, in order to get ready for the 2022 season. And it's time that we bring back the GC podcast, which is what we are doing for the 2022 season. My name is Mark Lewis. Thank you for joining us again here for Global Champions. I'm joined by two very exciting gentlemen, one of which who you'll know incredibly well, Frederick de Backer, who has forever been with us and will continue to do so. Frederick, hi, thank you.
Hey, Mark.
Welcome.
Thank you. Exciting gentleman and mostly excited gentleman.
So I wanted to
Very
make sure that I
excited.
got the title right. So you, Sam Watson, are the founder of EquiRatings, and we'll get into that in a few moments' time, as well as an Olympic eventer. That's where we're going with guests now in 2022. We're setting the bar incredibly high. Olympic eventer. Hi, Sam Watson. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, great to be here.
You brought the Irish weather with you?
I did. Wow, hurricanes. My Ryanair flight this morning was pretty shaky getting into the air, but we got here.
I'm surprised the flight took off, actually. From what I think everyone across Europe has been experiencing over the last 72 hours, the mere fact that the plane took off is very exciting. So thank you for joining us. We look forward to making 4 podcast episodes and being able to release them in the build-up towards the start of the events of Doha next week, or in a couple of weeks' time, I beg your pardon. The idea of this GC podcast is for us to take maybe a more in-depth look as to what the teams and riders and the numbers that support those teams and riders will look like for the upcoming season. We've already released the first episode of The Insider that came out on the GC platform recently. And we've decided to now take 4 episodes to try and unpack it a little bit further, to try and understand where we expect our teams to finish by the end of the season, why the 2022 season is set to be so exciting. Some of the new faces that are expected to perform. We spoke about this, in fact, on The Insider, Frederick, to some of the really exciting under-25 talents, and maybe not even just the under-25s, new riders to new teams, why we think they're so special, why do they stand out. And we've decided now to break up the 16 teams across 4 different episodes. And what we've decided to do is do this alphabetically, because we don't want any team hating on us that we think we put them at the bottom or at the top or in the middle. So we've decided to do this alphabetically. I've done the alphabetic separating. Is that
So if there's any mistake in that, it's your fault,
if we do,
basically.
exactly. So if we land up doing Can Stars before Berlin Eagles, that's all on me. So if I'm not mistaken, from what I remember from junior school, Berlin Eagles will be the first team that we'll discuss, alphabetically making sure we get it correct. So in our first group, Berlin Eagles, Can Stars, Hamburg Giants, and one of our new teams for the 2022 season, the Istanbul Sultans. Should we maybe start with the newcomers? I know we're speaking about Berlin, we've grouped them in the 4, but I feel interested that they're one of the newcomers. So do they get to go first, or must we go to Berlin first?
Well, we can do anything we want, but that means that we straight away ruin your alphabetical order from the first team already.
Okay. Let me not ruin our alphabetics. I will try and stick to Berlin. This will be very difficult for me. My brain won't allow it. So Berlin Eagles, a top 4 contender last year. For anyone that is new to the GCL in particular, they heartbreakingly missed out on a top 4 finish, just losing that out to London Knights in what was a really exciting run into the end of the season last year. They've always been quite consistent, Frederick. They once again have a consistent lineup. Your early impressions on how Berlin Eagles look for 2022?
I think that last year they missed out on the top 4 because of one reason. In my opinion, they were a 5-man team in a field of teams that all had 6 riders. They only had 5 riders on their team. They mainly used 4 of them. They still have those same 5 riders. Well, no, they don't. But they've got 6 riders that can really contribute, and I think that's really exciting. If you look, they've got Owen McMahon, who is a new member on the team, and Philipp Schulze-Tophoff. He's the under-25 rider, and then there's Kukuk, Weishaupt, Beerbaum, and Jane Richard Phillips. So those 4 are the same, and then McMahon is added, and Philipp Schulze-Tophoff, and that means that now that they've got literally 6 riders on their team that can really contribute over that entire season, which is now 17, 18 stages long. So it's an extra long season compared to last year. They've got more riders and more horses.
Do we think that the addition of the new riders will be able to relieve the pressure of Christian Kukup, Philipp Weishaupt? Because like many teams in the GCL, there seem to be a lot of reliance on them. And I know that Luca Beerbaum is certainly serving that managerial role. He and Mila actually had a very good 2021, and they certainly rode a lot of stages. But we so often saw Christian Kukuk and Philip Vissout being the go-to men. With these new additions, with these new faces, does this make Berlin Eagles, if they were already a top 4 contending team, does this now make them even stronger, Sam? The new faces that have come in, the ability, the expectation, does this improve them from what was a 2021 Berlin Eagles?
I think they've definitely improved, Mark, and they terrify me a little bit, Berlin, because we underestimated them a little bit last year. We had them ranked actually around the sort of 10th mark out of 16 teams, and they jumped up out of the field. They overperformed, and it's a team, when you look at the makeup, when you look at Beerbaum, Kukuk, Weishout, I think there's synergy in this team. I think they are a team that can overperform a little bit like Valkenswaard United do in this league. I think that they love it. I think they perform well together. In my opinion, they need to use Kukuk a little bit more. When we look at them last year, Weishout, Beerbaum and Laura Klapacker, they all had 7 starts in round 1. Ludger actually only produced 2 clear rounds. Same with Laura Klapacker. And it was Weishout that produced 5 clears from 7. He was really effective in round 1. They didn't use Kukuk as much. He was 5 starts, but he had 3 clears. So he's really effective. So try and get a little bit more usage, I would say. Christian Kukuk, he was 5 starts in round 1, 5 starts in round 2, out of 15 legs. He's only competing a third of the time. I'd use him a little bit more, try and get him in the ring more. But Weishout is the star man here, and I think the team still pivots around those two. Owen McMahon, really exciting. I think he brings a bit of horsepower as well. But if they improve on what they did last year, they're right there, aren't they?
I find that interesting, though, because if you're saying that at the start of last season, you had originally, the ratings they'd scheduled them in at 10th. We know they finished in 5th at the end of the season before they got to Prague. Does that mean that the jump from expectation to reality in 2021 was already such a high climb that did they reach a glass ceiling? Are they able to further extend the expectation even further beyond that in 22?
By everything that is being said here, you'd think so. The threat for the team in 2021 was that Beerbaum was mainly Mila, and Weishout was mainly Kobe, and Klaphaker was mainly Quinn. Kukuk, he switched more between Checker and Mumbai. He had more horses at his disposal. Richard Phillips, she used 2 different horses. Okay, Klaphaker had 3 in the end with Davenport, with Bantu Baloo and Quinn, but it was mainly Quinn. Weishout, there's no extra horse yet, I think, for Weishout other than Kobe.
But now with extra riders, does that take the pressure off that? Maybe last year it felt limiting.
That's what I think.
He has freedom now, right?
Yeah, I think so. Weishout is still with Kobe. Beerbaum is there with Mila and Cool Feeling, but it's mainly Kobe and Mila for those two. But if you look at the lineup for example, McMahon, and that's good that we have an Irishman because it's Owen. It's Owen, right?
Owen, yeah.
Owen yeah. McMahon, 3 good horses. Kukuk has got 2 nice 9-year-olds coming up. And then there's that Philip Schulze Tophoff, World Cup winner, under 25 rather, and you can always doubt that not every horse is a Grand Prix horse, but if you have a good 1.55 horse that can produce 4 or clear, it's valuable for those GCL teams. And I think that Philip Schulze Tophoff also brings 3, maybe even a 4th horse, and that makes it exciting for that team. So all of a sudden, I've lined it up. They can choose somewhere around, I think 18 horses in their lineup under those 6 riders in the team, and that's really valuable.
So 18 horses potentially at their disposal, a reinforced lineup, strong talent that was already there in the existing lineup. There's still that Ludger Beerbaum effect and the mentorship role that he plays for a team that was already challenging for a top 4 finish. And we'll talk about where we feel everyone will finish later. But I mean, does this suggest that based on that Berlin Eagles, I'm using invisible inverted commas, do they have to finish in the top 4 to live up to expectation if last year's team was already a top 5 finisher with what they've done now? Good shopping off season. Does this mean they have to top 4?
I think they're stronger than last year. The question is, how does that compare to the other teams? And I think as we go, we'll see how other teams have developed. But they are stronger than last year. They've always very much committed to GCL, everybody, and now they've got more firepower. So yes, I expect them to be top 4.
That's a strong one. But you're right.
Oh.
They're the strongest team in this quartet. Okay, this first podcast. They are. They definitely are. They need to overperform again. It would be my opinion. I have them. We run expected points for the season. Okay, we got one extra leg this year. We have them in and around 225 points for the season. Okay, you have to look back at last season to start getting a feel of where it's going to be. But for listeners to get a feel of what top 4 should look like, it's around 255 is what we think it'll be this year, to be in top 4, 250, 255 points.
Well, to put that in perspective, last year they finished on 244 and finished in 5th.
Yeah.
So last year, 244 got them just outside. London Knights pipped them right at the end to the post. They got 253, London Knights. Now, granted, as you said, different events, different number of events, I understand. But just from an overall perspective, to put it into perspective, 253 last year was a top 4 finish.
So if they do it again, I will have to accept, and this is why Berlin terrify me, I'll have to accept that we underestimate them. And they are, but they really could be a team. There's a couple of teams in this league, when you just look at the personalities there, you can tell there's a bit of synergy. You can tell it's not teams that have just sort of been thrown together and you hope they all gel and they mix. These guys want to perform for each other. They enjoy being in the ring together. You can see when you look at this team why they overperform versus how they look on paper. They commit to it.
Because this is a Ludger Beerbaum team. This is a Riesenbeck team. 4 of 6 riders live together in Riesenbeck. So we often hear about communication inside teams. That isn't always the easiest. Yeah, there is no easier communication than that. So
is it then unfair that we are not talking about Berlin Eagles more? And you're right, there is a very strong lineup of a remaining list of teams that will come here, because it's all good and well that you may feel you're a strong team. There are incredibly strong teams around you. But is it unfair of us to not be giving them more attention, more credit? Or is it simply that everyone else is so good too that sadly maybe they don't get spotlight?
That's the nature of the GCL. The quality is so high. But the margins are so fine. So it's... 25 points sounds a lot, but it actually happened to Paris Panthers last year in Doha, leg 1. I think it was Penelope Leprevaux, 3 rails down in the second round, dropped them completely out of it and nearly cost them in one leg, about 20 points. That could be the difference between 10th place and 4th place. The margins are fine in this sport. The quality and the depth is huge. The only unfair thing probably is that we're not doing this podcast in German, because there's obviously, I think this team will have fans. There is a bit of a tribal element to this team as well. That Ludger Beerbaum effect. I think they're going to have a lot of very loyal followers this season, and I think they're a team that could overperform again.
And to close it. I think we spent a lot of attention to Berlin Eagles last year, but not with Sam's perspective that they were overperforming. So that's a different light. Thank you for that, Sam.
So Berlin Eagles overperforming, good acquisitions in the off-season, great mentorship, strong riders, serious top 4 contender.
Yep.
And Kobe and Philip, the star combination. I think every team will kind of have one. A couple of the teams are lucky enough to have a handful of them. But that's a combination I'm really looking forward to seeing in the ring.
Yeah.
And with the World Equestrian Games coming up, I don't think that Kobe is a horse for the World Equestrian Games. So it's a horse that can be focused on
purely
the GCL.
on GCL. Okay, so Berlin Eagles, the first of our 4 teams for episode 1 of our GC podcast today, seemingly doing some very good work. And I feel that not all teams will be able to come out of this discussion with us saying the same. Alphabetically leads us to Can Stars. Sami Aldahan stands out for me because obviously he was a big figure for them in 2021. We know it was an incredibly difficult year for the team. It was a year that garnered very little success, a lot of talking points perhaps, and more often than not, arguably more questions than answers. So we know Johnny Pulse has handed in Miami Celtic uniform and now will be running out for Can Stars. Again, we spoke about it on the Insider, Frederick, you and I. with Kian O'Connor, Sammy Aldahan, Johnny Pulse coming through, Max Watchman as well, exciting under 25 rider. Is there an opportunity that the 22 Can Stars can far outshine the 21 Can Stars?
Yes. If. So they've got Jens Backman as a newcomer and Isabella Ruskov. Isabella Ruskov is a 22-year-old, comes from the United States, rides Jumpy of the Hermitage, a horse that jumped, I think, World Equestrian Games with Abdel Said in the past, has got one or two other 1.50 m horses, scratching up to 1.55 m, but for her, that's not yet the rider to count on. Then there's Jens Backman, 37-year-old German rider with a good set of horses. He's got 3 horses that can contribute to the team. Then there's Johnny Pulse. In 2021, you can't take it away from Johnny Pulse. He was really there for the team. Whenever they needed him, he was there. He always put his horses in for the team. Then there's Sammy Aldahan. In terms of motivation, few riders as motivated as Sammy. Then there's Kian O'Connor and Max Watchman. Those 2 riders have got so much horsepower that it all comes down to the commitment. How often, yes or no, will those 2 riders come out for the team? Is it a priority for them or not? I mean, everybody has priorities and different priorities. That's okay. Just looking specifically GCL this year for the team, if those 2 riders, Kian O'Connor and Max Watchman, contribute equally with the rest, I think that Can Stars will be a different team than last year.
3 new faces in the lineup, and bearing in mind that there are 6 riders per team, we're talking about a 50% overhaul here. But some might argue that for a team that finished in last place, a 50% overhaul is actually probably a really good thing, kind of sweep out the old and bring in the new. New faces, we already touched on Johnny Pulse, of course, and what he was able to do in 2021 when given the opportunity. But Sam, when you're talking about a 50% overhaul of a team, that has to bring with it new energy, new feelings, new emotions, new ideas. What do the newcomers bring to this team?
Yeah, they're going to need to bring something, or as Frederick points out, Kian O'Connor and Max Watchman will need to commit more, because between them last year, 5 rounds and no clear rounds, and they're well capable of being the centerpiece of this team. Sammy Aldahan, he was the busiest. He had 21 rounds. I mean, one of the busiest GCL riders. Bringing 6 clear rounds. If he can up that a little bit more. Abdel Said is a loss. You know, he had 10 rounds and 5 clears. He was actually the most effective man for them last year. So that's what the newcomers need to replace. And not the strongest on paper, but at the same time, nothing to lose. That 2021 season might just itch at them a little bit. Max Watchman in particular, I think his career is all ahead of him, you know, and he wants to be on the big stages. He wants to make a big impression in this sport, and this is the platform to do it. And I could see him with Kian in his corner backing him. I would see Max potentially playing a bigger part. Probably even than Kian, because I think this is going to be the springboard for his career to take off a little.
When you say bigger part, are you suggesting that as the under 25 rider, he becomes the star of the show, or simply greater support to the team that's around him?
He's got to start by getting in the ring more, you know, that and I think this is, you know, for any young rider to compete on this tour, you know, that has to be it. And I think when we're going through most of the teams, those young riders would be fighting to get their hand up, and you know, the management is going to be saying, you know, not yet, you know, 2 shows time, 3 shows time. Whereas I think Max has a chance for Can Stars to be there, to put his hand up and get in.
Is it exciting or worrying?
I just want to pick up on what Sam says, because he's absolutely right, because I'm just looking at the numbers. Max Watchman is born in 2003.
Oh,
that means that he's 20 years younger, 21 years younger than me. So that's the difficulty. He's a very good rider. With Lazaro, Berlux, Doret, Quintini, he's got 3-4 very good horses, but he's only 18. So what you say is right, because I also say he has to commit more. But then I look at the number and it says, oh, you're right, he's 18.
So, but here's my question. So is it exciting, because I'm trying to look at it glass half full, glass half empty, is it exciting Or is it problematic that you are hoping and expecting and relying on such a young man to carry a lot of weight for this team?
From what I look at it, it's double because they've got Max can really contribute, and if at the end of the season we say he didn't feature as much as he could or should, we'll also be able to say but he was also protected just to take it step by step, and that's going to be the difficulty. So from his perspective, I think management around him is so strong that there always will be a good and strong plan. Purely from a Can Stars perspective, let's hope that he finds himself in a very positive, comfortable, confident zone that he can contribute, because purely on talent and horses he can. His experience isn't there yet. That's just something that needs to grow over the months and years, and literally with him years. But that's also why there is Global Champions League for him, with so many stages and such big sport.
Sam, do the ratings tell us that they are better than the single podium that they got in 2021? Or as a team that finished last, is getting a podium seen as a huge victory already?
That is going to be a victory. You have to call it how it is. I mean,
I say that respectfully.
Yeah.
If you're a team that is bottom of the table, getting on the podium is a huge, huge victory.
Yeah.
But I wonder now, with a fresh overhaul, new riders, new ability, are they better than a single podium in 2022?
I think what this team need to do is focus on a couple of events that suit. And it's interesting because my opinion is that they've maybe missed a little opportunity here. I know Doha comes early in the season, but Doha's clear rates in the last 3 seasons are way above the other venues. And it was maybe, and for a rider like Max Watchman, I think you want to look at the round ones maybe rather than the round twos. Say, Max, we're going to bring you to this show. We're just going to put you in round one because the clear rates are slightly higher, and pick the venues where we know over time, where we can actually start to rely on. There's always going to be variance. Some years, we can't fully predict these course designers, but there are some venues that actually show slightly higher clear rates and say, that's where we're going to target. We're going to get you in the ring there, get that good experience. And maybe even, I think a team that is a little bit light on horsepower, you've got to get in the ring all the time, and it's great mileage for the riders, great mileage for the horses, but target maybe a couple of places where you think other riders or other teams might not have their A game, and that's where we're going to really target and try and get a podium.
I think it's a really, really interesting point that Sam makes. Doha as an example. Don't bring him to Miami, or don't bring any inexperienced combination to Miami, because Miami is so difficult. The clear rate of Miami is way below, I think, below the other venues. And the concept of what's happening in the team, who is ready and who is willing to use that second round as the qualifier for Grand Prix, then bring those inexperienced or lesser experienced riders into that GCL round one, and that's actually a good perspective. You think that GCL round one, it has to happen there, you can't drop the ball yet in round one, but better use round one and try to make up in round two than do it the other way around.
Yeah.
Are you able to give us a predicted position for Can Stars for 2022? You spoke about Berlin Eagles. No, again, we have to unpack it. You spoke about Berlin coming in at 10th last year to, in reality, finish in 5th. I wonder, what does 2022 say Can Stars could or would do?
You've given me a tough start. You're going to make me sound like an evil, negative person on this.
Alphabetical order. This was the importance of doing this, yes.
It was. But look, Can Stars, unexpected points, 15th out of the 16 teams. And being honest about that value is 187 points. And there's a bit of a gap because we have a lot of teams clustered in and around where we said Berlin Eagles, sort of 225, a couple of the teams between 220 and 240. There's a lot of teams jammed in there. So that's quite a jump back to then Can Stars on 185. Like, it says they are going to struggle to get out of that bottom 2, 3, 4 teams. But again, it's GC. You get a couple of podium finishes and it does change around, but those are the facts.
That is the thing. They have got, I don't think that they are a top 4 contender. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
They're not a top 4 contender, but I do think that they have got the horses and the potential and the riders. If they plan it well, They had one podium finish in 2021. If they plan it well, they can aim for 2, 3 and just bring best horses and best riders to 2, 3, 4 locations and become a middle part team. They don't have to top perform consistently, but it's if they bring 3 or 4 good horses to one event that would suit them, where they can prepare for, is more valuable than spread it and unplan it across the season and be always nearly. And then you become a 16th, 15th, 14th, 13th ranked team.
Is there importance in managing expectation here as well? Because you spoke about the podium in 2021. If I'm not mistaken, their next best result was finishing 7th in Valkenswaard. So that tells a story. You've gone to the podium once and your next best finish was 7th. So maybe we, the team, the show jumping GCL community, is it important to manage expectation that if and when they finish 8th at an event, we don't go, oh, that was a bad day? Maybe that's classified as actually a good position for a team that finds itself in the position that it's in. So I'm wondering now, again, the joy of being able to do this preseason, but should we manage our expectations? So what may be seen as a criticism is actually not, because the team is not in a position to challenge for top honors. So that might take some pressure off them. They don't see it as a disappointment when they don't podium. Instead, it's a really good thing when they finish 8th, 9th, 7th.
Yeah. That's why I would frame my projections in terms of expected points, because then if Can Stars got to 200 points, that's only going to be mid-table, but that's going to be
a huge victory for them.
They're going to have performed really well. There's 3 ways that we look at this. We look at resources, which is preseason. You look at commitment, which is the teams that these horses field, and then you look at actual performance. How did those teams that they field, did they overperform, underperform? And so Can Stars, we know when we go through the 16 teams in this league, resource-wise, there's far stronger horsepower out there. There are some ridiculous teams in this league. It's embarrassing. They're so good. They're not going to be able to field and commit those horses all the time, week in, week out. So that's the first step for Can, and we've talked about that. You know, we want to see Max Watchman, Cian O'Connor getting a little bit more involved in the league. That's step 1 in my opinion. And then step 2 is just perform a little bit above expectations, because that's going to be the storyline of this league anyway. Whether you're talking about lower tier teams, middle tier teams, or the top level teams, some are going to underperform, some are going to overperform, and for Can Stars, it's just about making sure that they're just overperforming that little bit.
It's about improving expectation, I think. If you're the Berlin Eagles, your expectation is now to go from 5 to 4 and get into that, those semi-finals. If your expectation is Shanghai Swans, it's from finishing runner-up to finishing champion. If it's Can Stars, bottom of the table, your expectation is now to finish 12th.
But I can't wait until we get into, I think, the 3rd or last episode of this podcast, where we'll talk about Prague Lions, and how they have overperformed last year. We'll talk about it later, but don't forget that Prague Lions only missed on podiums, missed top 4 because they didn't score a podium. Prague Lions were consistently better than Berlin Eagles. However, Eagles scored more podiums. So I do want to repeat, if Can Stars plan, cooperate, management makes a 17-stage plan, that with 2 or 3 podium finishes, they can easily become a middle sector team. So if they finish 8th, great. I mean, 8th at the stage, great. But I think they are capable of picking 3-4 stages where they can finish 4th or podium. And when they've got those double digits and those podiums, I think then they can finish last a few times as well, because it doesn't hurt as much if you're always aiming for 8th place at a stage and you then finish 12th. That hurts more than being 3rd once and finishing last another time, compared to your opposition on the championship.
That's a good point. Rather succeed well beyond expectation once and then go back to where you were instead of, humming it out in the middle of the table, perhaps. Right. Can Stars brings us to Hamburg Giants, another team that struggled in 2021, finishing in 13th place. Sam, you're a man for the points. They finished on 153 last season. I'm not too sure where 153 would put you in 2022, probably right down there again. But Hamburg Giants had a...
So, yeah, you can't see this because there's no video, but Sam nods his head and says yes.
So Hamburg Giants did struggle in 2021. They probably will have a difficult time of it, some might say, in 2022. Bart Bless, of course, huge star for them in last season. 2022, Hamburg Giants, it has to look better than 2021. Tell me it looks better than 2021 for Hamburg Giants.
It does, Sam.
Yeah, well, yeah, it does. Was there a better star man in a team, possibly, than Bart Bless? They only 12 clear rounds from Hamburg Giants in the whole season. He produced 10 of them. What a contribution from
Talk about single-handedly dragging a team over the line.
And he does have some company. This year, I think there's going to be 2 or 3 of them really capable of doing it. The interesting thing with Hamburg Giants was why only 5 clear rounds in round 1 last year. That should be where you're putting in. They were the second lowest team in round 1 in 2021. I don't know why they weren't starting, but that's something to look at, just from a management point of view. Sometimes there's always going to be a little bit of difference between round 1, round 2. You don't worry too much. But a team like Hamburg Giants being the second lowest performing teams, in that first round, you'd be looking at it. 7 clears from 28 rounds in round 2 is a little bit better, still below average. But I think the key, Frederick, is Bart Bless has company this time.
Yeah, and it's super interesting the way Sam puts it. 5 out of how many first rounds? 5 out of
15. Oh, sorry, by 30.
30.
Because it's 15 legs. That's 2 riders per round.
5 out of 30.
1 out of 6. That you finish with that number second last, second last ranked. That's okay. Because there's always going to be somebody who's better or worse. But just a pure number is a problem, like you say. Just producing those clear rounds. Because if you produce more clear rounds, it's okay that your teammate once has 8 or 12. But it has to be compensated with clear rounds. 4 and 4 is also good. But they didn't score that many 4s and 4s. It was I think the spread of numbers that they had. The rare clear compared to the 12s and 16s in round 1 or round 2. And like you say, Sam, I think with this season, Bart Bless, Jur Vrieling, Simon de Lestre returns, and then Suus Kuijten, Linda Heed, and Sarah Vingrakova. Especially those first 3, that's the core, that's the structure, no, Sam?
Yeah, Simon de Lestre and Jur Vrieling, actually, they bring... Even now it's small, but slightly higher rated horses even than Bart Bless. So if they can perform and commit like he did, this team is completely different. 10 clears from Bart last year. If this team get up to, they could really turn around. This could be a big turnaround. I think this is a real watching season. If you want to pick a team. That if your weakness in sport is to go for the underdog and you like the pain of picking a team that's been struggling a little bit, I think it's Hamburg this year that could really pull themselves up.
Would we perhaps see them then be the biggest climbers from 21 to 22? And again, whether they make top 4, whether they, let's just open up the Pandora box, whether they win it all, they finish top 4, doesn't matter. Are we potentially suggesting that Hamburg could be the biggest climbers, making the most ground from season to season, from 21 and 22? Will they see the biggest climb, we feel, based on how difficult they found life in 21 and what they've potentially done for 22?
I think that is a fair statement to make. They for us, they underperformed by 26 points last year. They have better resources. And so therefore, if they do commit, and if they just don't underperform like they did last year, you're going to see a massive points shift from 2021 to 2022. Better resources, and as long as they don't, and I think that is a key thing to this is that some of the overperformance, underperformance, it's nothing real. It's just how sport goes, and that is why the first team on this podcast, Berlin Eagles, I think they are hard to call, because for me, if they finish 7th or 8th this year, people will look at it and go, oh, they were knocking on the door of a top 4 last year. How disappointing. And I'd be saying, well, that in this league with this amount of quality, that's where that team kind of sits. So the interesting kind of matchup for me in this podcast is actually Hamburg versus Berlin, because Hamburg underperformed by 26 points last year. Berlin overperformed for us by the exact same margin, by 26. Interesting to see how they end up this year.
Isn't the expectation versus the forecast so fascinating here? Because I would never, based on the 21 season, I would never put Hamburg anywhere near Berlin, purely because, and as you said, one underperformed and one overperformed, which really extended the gap between the two. But based on expectation, based on forecast, we're now talking about teams like this challenging. Based on Sam's forecast, or are we looking at Hamburg actually being far, far stronger, Frederick? Are you confident that they can be far stronger in 22?
So I looked at horses, because that's what it's in the end about. In the beginning, everybody's motivated and everybody's there when the season starts. They've all had a break in the winter, they all had a rest, and then the season starts. And in the first stages, all those horses are fresh and they're there and they're jumping and they're performing. And everybody's willing to go to these events. But it's in the last third of the season that you see how strong or how weak a team really is. Do they have the horses? And from these 4 teams, we're going to discuss Istanbul Sultans next, alphabetical. And of course, it's not perfect science, not at the level of accuracy ratings, but Berlin Eagles, I think, have I got that right? Yeah, I've got 18 horses now ready. Can Stars have got 19 horses at the level, more or less. Take it or leave it. So if it's 19 or 18 or 17, I'll go with that. Hamburg Giants, in my opinion, have got 21 horses at their disposal. And maybe one will get sold and another one grows into the level that we haven't just spotted just yet. But from those teams, Hamburg Giants here has the strongest lineup. And it's well divided. It's Bart Bless with 4. It's Jurveling with 5. It's Seymour de Lestre with 5 very competitive horses. De Lestre, okay, I've also got Hermes Ryan in that group, who is now 17 years young. He won't jump every round, but he is nearly a guarantee for clears of 4s. Then there's Suus Kuiten with 3. Sarah Vingalkova, under 25 rider, not that much experience at this level, has got 2. And now my question to Sam, how do you look at Linda Heed, Swedish rider, that we don't see much at this level, but I've went through the horses. I found at least 2 and there's a few that are in that 1.50 m level that have got the age still to step up that could surprise us. So they've got already 3 with 4 or 5 horses. There's Suus Kuiten with 3 horses. Vingalkova, I think they'll have to mix and match and see where she fits in. But Linda Heed is somebody who competes in Nations Cups and Grand Prix and World Cups and travels and has. She's not yet an Edwina Tops-Alexander. However, with De Curio, maybe that Loreen horse, that's also maybe a 4th or 5th player. So I don't know if you have anything on.
Yeah, Linda's interesting because she brings 4 horses to the table. All, again, look, we're talking GCL, we're talking the cream of the crop here. So slightly below average on ratings, but that's not actually any kind of a downbeat comment to make. We're talking about the Premier League of the sport here. But she has 4 horses really close on ratings. You mentioned 2 of them, Hardcore as well there, and Certina M. So, and then Decoro and Laurent. So she has 1 or 2 of those are surely going to progress this year and step up from being a little bit below the average line by GCL standards to suddenly, if all you need to be is just that little bit above average. You know, the team that's going to win this league is going to jump clear about 55% of the time. It's not rocket, you know, it's not, you don't have to go in and do something, you know, that seems unachievable. It's about being, very good, but just consistently very good.
I think it bodes very well for the Hamburg Giants. I think it suggests that for a team that really struggled last season and probably had a lot more disappointment than it did exciting, positive storylines, to hear inclusions, to hear the firepower, to hear what the stables are looking like, I think it sounds like a really promising season for them. And again, what their own expectations are, we won't know. Those discussions will be held within the team. But to me, it sounds very promising for a team that, as we said, can really, really shoot up and impress.
Cool.
Simon Delestre. That's the key for me. Last year, at the 150 classes and above at 5-star shows, because we didn't see him in GCL. So what was he doing? For us at that level, at the 5-star shows, those 150 classes and above, our top man on ratings was Fredriksson. Our second was Daniel Deusser. Our third was Simon Delestre. 41 clears from 85 rounds he put in. This is a world-class rider and competitive. So maybe if we filter out and we just go to the 160s, okay, he drops down a little bit. But for those 155 classes, he could be really, really effective.
And that's where the positive or the challenge, the opportunity lays, and also the risk. Simon Delestre is hyper competitive and wants to win those classes. The thing with GCL is you don't always have to win the classes. You have to jump clears. Clear with the third fastest, the sixth fastest time is also very good for the team. If you think about the individual, sixth is not good enough because you want to win, especially when you're Simon Delestre. But if management can contain him to jumping clear rounds instead of going for because if you win a class, that means that you've jumped the fastest clear. You also, at least more than once for that one victory, have jumped the fastest 4. Where you could have jumped a clear. So that's also a little thing there that they have to keep, I think, in mind.
Okay. Hamburg Giants, one to look out for 2022. That brings us to the fourth and final team of episode 1 of our first GC podcast for the year, Istanbul Sultans. It's funny because earlier on today, already here in episode 1, we spoke about if it's a bad thing that an under 25 rider becomes the star of the show. And I know we spoke to Sanne Thijssen in the Insider recently. I know that we're speaking about GCL, but I'll quickly just reflect back on the LGCT. We have to, that performance in Valkenswaard, where she outjumped Edwina Tops-Alexander, by the way. And there are not many riders in the world that will be able to go head-to-head with her, let alone in a jump-off in a Grand Prix and better her, only to be beaten by the most ridiculous run from Daniel Deusser. And we still suggested to her on air that perhaps it was that performance that really just got the world shopping for Sanne Thijssen's abilities in the 2022 season. We know a little bit about her. I've at least been able to watch a little bit of her in 2021. Sam, if we open up with her, still very young, I wonder about the pressure of a young rider. I was going to say junior, but that's completely wrong and unfair. A young rider to carry a team, a new identity. Where does that rest on her? What does it say?
I think she must be relishing it. I think she must be really looking forward to this season because it's her chance to be a front person. That's what everyone in sport wants to be. That's it. I think she's going to relish it. I think she's going to thrive under it. Conquidam is the standout. He is on ratings. Kobe is catching him up because already a 5-star win this season, but the highest rated horse on this show for us so far. So yes, we're about to dive into the weakest team. But the best combination here, this is a world-class combination, and interesting to see if she really commits Conquidam to the Sultans, to their season. I think she'll be in demand for other duties, which will be tough and would be a shame for the team, I think. So, I'd like to see her in this GCL performing plenty. I'm laughing at the names of her of 2 other horses she has here. I'm here and hi there. Like literally putting their names up to say that look, we're here and we can do a job as well. And I think this is it. This is going to be the introduction. I think we had the aperitif of Sanne Thijssen as a young rider last year. I think she showed us probably more than glimpses of what she can do. And I think now it's a big year in anyone's career as well. That breakthrough, those couple of breakthrough performances, that's great. They come without pressure because
there's no expectation.
No one was watching you last year. This year, people aren't just watching you. There's people relying on you, and that brings another level of pressure. I think she's more than capable of stepping up and doing that for the team. For the breeders who are also listening. I'm here and hi there are brothers. Okay. And bred by Sanne and her father and her family.
Wow.
Just to
give it some sometimes
cool.
irrelevant, however funny context.
But what does it say about the rest of the composition of the team, Frederick? Because there's no denying that if you are a star rider and you are young, that's a great benefit for any team. If you are the star of a team at that age, does it suggest that? Or let me ask you the question, and I won't make any suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
What does her role and her spotlight in that team say about the composition of her teammates around her?
Do you follow football?
Yes.
Yeah, she is the Erling Haaland of Dortmund. With Dortmund has got a normal defense, and they concede 2 goals per match. I don't know if it's true, but a lot. But Erling Haaland scores 3. That's why they win, and that's why they're second behind Bayern Munich. If Haaland is not on the team, they still score. They still concede the same 2 goals, but they don't score the 3 goals. And it's very interesting what Sam says as well. How big is the commitment? She's got those 3 horses. How big is the commitment of Conquidam? Because if it isn't there, then the team is really exposed. So there's 2 things. There's the horses of Sanne, which are very important. Is Conquidam going to be used solely for GCL or wider also for Nations Cups? That's a question. And then, of course, there's a thing. The idea Sanne Thijssen could go up against Daniel Dozer in Valkenswaard because she is, and I have to be careful what I'm saying, Sanne Thijssen is 23. So she was a 22-year-old taking on one of the best riders in the world. No problem. At the home ground, no problem. Nothing depending on it. If she messes up, she goes home 20 kilometers away from Valkenswaard and nothing happened. Now she is not only competing in a team on a regular basis, everybody's also saying, and you can't miss it because it's right there on paper, she is the number 1 rider on the team. So there's a 23-year-old who knows that it will come down to her. She will need to put in a lot of effort, energy, horses to keep the team going. She's got the opportunity. She got the opportunity from Istanbul Sultans to be on the team. She also has to manage that weight on her shoulders.
I will race through this, and I'll do so intentionally to get to my point, but apologies. Okay. So, Sam, Doha, Miami, Mexico, Madrid, Saint-Tropez, Hamburg, Cannes, Stockholm, Paris, Monaco, Berlin, London, Valkenswaard, Rome, New York, Riyadh, and Prague. Sanne Thijssen and Conquidam cannot jump every single round of that. She needs the support, as does Borussia Dortmund, because Erling Haaland cannot play every single game in every competition across the world. What does she have alongside her? What support is available to her? Because while the Istanbul Sultans will be delighted to have her, they must be aware that they cannot jump her and that combination in particular every single event throughout the year.
Yeah, and you know, Garrett Nieburg and Darren Demersroy, if they're listening, you know, they're saying, hang on, don't forget about us, and it's, you know, that there's a full team there of other people who are going to put their hand up. And I think that the job, it's interesting, your analogy of sort of offense defense, Frederick, is the job here is not to put yourself under too much pressure to go in and jump a clear round, and not to put the horses under too much pressure to go in and go in. And this is there are 4 rounds with no drop scores. You know, you don't make mistakes. And what the weaker teams tend to do is they tend to make mistakes. And if you, particularly in round 1, if you make a mistake in round 1, a big mistake, if you basically crash out, that's it, no points for the team. That's a difference to even finishing last in round 2, you're still walking around with about 8 points. You know, it makes a difference. So you've got to get yourself in the right mindset so that you're not putting too much pressure on yourself. Because we all know, you know, I think in any sport it's easy to say, right, I want to be the best, I want to win. It's not always the best strategy, because subconsciously your mind knows, hang on, that's tough. You're going to put yourself under pressure. Go in, jump a 4-fault round. Nothing wrong with that. You know, and if the bad day is 8 faults, again, we can live with that. Just rule out those. We don't want to see 12 faults.
Yeah, for a bottom team, a round of 8 is doable and survivable.
And what you say is also true, Sam. Okay, just take it on the chin and move on, but don't get eliminated, because it's also 17 stages, and if you finish last, it's 6 points per stage. You don't want to do that consistently, but if you don't score at all, that also hurts. Going back to the team, like, and it's good that you point us towards that as well, because it's not just Salatijse. It's Garrett Nieburg, Andrea Merico de Miranda, Derin Demirsoy, Omer Kareivli, FSCI. Let's talk about them. Garrett Nieburg, son of Lars Nieburg, Atlanta Olympic champion, former rider of For Pleasure before he went to Ening. Two good horses, in my opinion. Maybe on your rating, they don't match Killer Queen or Tobago, but two good horses.
Yeah, Ben 431 is in a position that I haven't seen this horse jump, but he's in a position that this could be a very good horse. This could be a very good horse. And again, so you're unexposed. You've got to see what happens when you put a team into this environment, because some are just going to jump up. You put them on a stage, and they're going to raise their game. This could absolutely be one of those combinations. And on paper, that's the second best horse in this team is Garrett Nieburg's Ben 431.
Do the Istanbul Sultans have an opportunity to finish anywhere other than 16th in 2022?
Yes.
According to your numbers, Sam.
Yeah, of course.
The glass has to be half full.
What I'm saying is the numbers. We are trying to get there's always subjectivity and objectivity, and Sanne Thijssen will be confident and tell us that she can jump clear and has good teammates and good riders based on the science behind it, based on the expectation, the forecast. Where do they finish?
They're the lowest rated team in the league. They have an expected points value of 175 points. We said Cannes Stars were 187. So that kind of a gap, 12 points, that's something you can really overturn. The difficulty is being projected at 175. All of the other teams are above 210. On projections, but some of those teams are going to underperform. Hamburg did it last year. There's gonna be the Rome Gladiators. They could easily underperform. London Knights could go either way this season. They've had a tough window, and we'll get to them on their show. But a couple of those teams will underperform. They just have to overperform that little bit and just pass teams. Just don't be bottom two.
Because that's the thing. I haven't seen FSCI compete in Meter 60 classes in the last 12 months. He's bringing back his best horse, Call Me Princess. Is she going to make it, yes or no? If she makes it, she's straight away an addition that I think hasn't featured yet in the calculations. So if a team can underperform by 23 or 26 points, the way Sam predicted it about Berlin Eagles or Hamburg Giants, it can also happen here. So I do think that it's a team that has to, again, play it very, very, very smart, because they are low on horsepower. So when you don't have many bullets in your gun, you have to aim really, really well.
And also...
First Borussia Dortmund, and now the bullets in the gun is brilliant. Continue. I thought that was...
No. So
you're full of them today.
Yeah, but then there's Omer Kareivli with two good horses. One horse that jumped championships. So... there you go, Omer. Then there's Derin Demirsoy, Koblenz, Minuit, Hunter, Caprice. Now, okay, and those Hunter and Caprice aren't really meter 55, meter 60 horses, I think. Then there's Elzas, recently added, comes from Julia Martinengo Marquet. Great horse, very good horse. Could very well become straight away. I don't know what the rankings say about Elzas with Martinengo, of course, not with Derin. They first have to become a combination, then get exposed at that level, but...
Again, bang! That is a typical GCL horse. So that is a horse who is bang there, middle of the ratings. It's not an Explosion. It's not a King Edward, but that's a horse who on ratings is going to perform to this level. So capable of doing it here. So if they can make that combination, and maybe he finds a little bit more from the horse. And again, you can simplify this a little bit as well. If you are the Istanbul Sultans, you could, if this becomes your biggest focus of 2022 season, you're not thinking about Nations Cups, you're not thinking about other things, you're actually thinking about GCL. Do two things. Firstly, focus on your points. Don't focus on what the other teams are doing. If you get your team over 200 points this season, it's going to do good things for you in the transfer windows going forward, because you can turn around to other riders in the team and go, look, we did a solid job here. if you come to our team, bring us a few more clears, we're within touching distance of going up. So you've got to make yourself attractive so that other people will want to come and raise your team's performance going forward. And secondly, just get some clear rounds on the board. You don't have to use 10, 6. You will inevitably use 10 to 16 combinations. But as we've seen from the other teams that were successful, get one or two horses in your team, putting 5, 6 clears on the board. Suddenly, you're bang there.
But is that even the expectation for a team that is forecast to finish bottom of the table?
They've got to find those combinations.
Do they not have the leeway to want to jump 4 and 4, to jump 4 and 8, to jump clear and 8? I mean, we're talking about jumping clear rounds because it's the goal of the sport. But surely, again, we spoke about management of expectations here. As a team forecast at the bottom, yes, they want to jump clear, but would they not be satisfied with 4s and a 4 and clear, etc.? Because that will put them in a better position than what the forecast is suggesting.
And good management is putting out the horses in a situation where they can perform. Andrea Merigo has got with Hilfiger a very good horse, a very nice horse. Like you say, it's not an explosion, it's not a King Edward, but those are freaks. And there's only 1 or 2 born like that every year out of the 50,000 show jumping foals born every year. So with Hilfiger, if they don't over-ask him, he can bring those a clear and a 4 and 8, and a clear and an 8 and a clear. So, but they have to put him out, not over-asking, because then he'll be producing 8s and 8s. It's just finding the moment where these horses don't expect yourself to finish above middle, but be aware of your weakness, of your strengths, and plan to avoid those weaknesses and to play to your strength. I think that is what. And okay, I know that I'm really hoping, because it's so easy to say, okay, that's a team that is going to finish last. No, I really hope that they prove us that good management, planning, because there's 3 Turkish riders in there. And then with Sanne Thijssen, who lives only kilometers away from these 3 Turkish riders in the Netherlands, again, there's very good communication. Don't forget, there's other teams that we'll discuss over the next few podcasts that are new composed teams, where, like London Knights, that we have always said that many teams struggle to communicate in the first 6 or 8 legs of the season before they've got their communication and they know each other and they understand each other, just like in football. Here we've got already 4 riders that understand and know each other really, really well. So that's the strength of that team. There we go.
And I think the difficulty of this team, there's strategy at play here, because when you have limited resources, do you target a couple of shows like we've said with other teams on this show? Do you try and get all of your best performers onto the pitch at the same leg and go, we're going to target these 4 or 5? And then even which legs are those? Because it's going to be so tempting to put your best horse like a Conquidam into Miami, which is a tough show, but the team around her, that they're going to struggle in a venue like that. Whereas actually Conquidam's strength is going to be when you go to a venue where there's going to be quite a lot of double clears and quite a lot of clears and 4s, and he's got the pace to separate that team from another team that's on 4 or is potentially even 0. So strategy, I couldn't even answer that off the top of my head. Now that is that's a sleepless night one. I think where you're staying up all night looking at which teams tend to target which venues are going to suit our team. But I think that's the big question: do we put our best feet forward together on the same day, or do we try and mix it up a little bit and just hope that the weaker links don't get too weak?
Take a look at how much conversation we've already generated around the Istanbul Sultans now.
And this was going to be a 30-minute podcast.
You see,
85.
And that's really good, because it already shows you how much conversation there is amongst the 3 of ourselves. So as the year progresses and as their performances come and go, and they will be good and bad, I like that it's not a team that, as you said, forecast for the bottom. Well, good luck to them. There is talent, there is expectation, there is management, there is potential. And I think because of that, it shows already in how much conversation we are having around them. We have come to an end of podcast.
Yeah.
Episode 1.
Just want to say, go Sultans.
Go Sultans. Again, everyone enjoys a newcomer. So just a reminder, you were here on the GC Podcast platform. We have divided these 16 GCL teams throughout the 2022 season alphabetically in 4 groups of 4. We have covered the Berlin Eagles, Can Stars, Hamburg Giants, and the Istanbul Sultans. I'm here with Frederick de Backer and Sam Watson. There will be 3 further episodes to come where we will unpack the remaining 12 teams and give you more insight as to what is expected throughout the rest of the campaign and the rest of the lineup. So, gents, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please do join us again for episode 2 of the GC Podcast.